Oh, sorry. I forgot I'm supposed to be speaking English. What's up, dudes and dudes? Here, and my name is Scyushi, and we are back in the Trove to the Trove patch notes. For PlayStation and Xbox, my hat goes out to you. Not my heart, just my hat. Apparently, there's a lot of glitches going on with upgrading the gems and crap like that. Also, the Vac-O-Matic has not been fixed yet. They did mention that they're going to fix it in the next update. Anyways, let's get into it. We've got a pretty lengthy patch to talk about today. Maybe more so lengthy just because there's a lot of things we got to go into detail with. But in any case, before we end up getting started with that, I would appreciate if you would leave a like on the video. Come on, it just takes 2 seconds. Just do it, Jeremy. Like, come on, what else are you doing? I see you there just sitting on your phone, doing nothing. Come on. Thank you. Hopefully that creeped somebody out. So this is the block party update for Trove. It's got a pretty significant amount of content added to it. Most of all in the Mystic Gems, combat block, and some balancing changes for some of the classes. So first we'll talk about combat block. So combat block is a new system which can protect Trovians from death. Each point of combat block can save Trovians from a single damaging attack which would otherwise kill them. Yes, this works similarly to death defying, but it doesn't heal you because it doesn't trigger the flask. And the attacks that can normally kill you through death defying, those few rare attacks, combat block will prevent those one-hit KOs. While all classes can benefit from combat block, not really, which we'll get into, it is specifically oriented towards melee characters who must wade into close quarters combat, risking more than ranged characters. Not really. The maximum amount of block you can have depends on your class and the defensive stats on your weapon face and hat equipment. So the defensive stats are max health, health regen, and stability. I'm pretty sure it goes in that order of priority on your gear, but it's not relevant, and we'll get into that. Properly geared melee classes like the Knight or Revenant can expect to have over 1,000 points of combat block. No. Users can fill up their battle block to its maximum value for either 25 credits or 250 qubits. Users can get plus 500 battle block or plus 100 battle block for varying amounts of block element. So it's better that I just show you guys rather than talking about it, and kind of go into detail as to how combat block is very, very helpful and completely changes the end game, as well as which classes are viable for certain aspects of the game. So this is the battle block battery, which we can actually buy a battle block battery to throw down in our cornerstones. Not our club worlds where it would matter, our cornerstones. So I just have one of these sitting in my inventory doing nothing. Devs, fix that, please. And then for whatever reason, combat block is broken as a whole right now because you can't actually, like, all of these are locked and I don't know why. Everybody has them locked. It doesn't matter what class you're on at all. The battle block can be, basically this is all we're doing is just buying this over and over again. It gives you 100 battle block. Battle block is this little tumor that you see on the side of my health bar. And you see that I have 99 on my Neo Ninja, which essentially means that for every tick of damage that I take when I'm at 0 HP, I will survive for 99 individual hits. Yes, if you're sitting in lava or acid, it will just drain your combat block, so you do want to be careful. The way you get block element is just from loot collecting equipment, but you'll also get a ton of it from the gear crafter boxes, most of all just because you're going to be getting so much equipment. So it's a very easy resource to farm for and get. The problem is, like I said, these are locked, but even on my Knight, which I had fairly powerful, I was only able to get like maybe close to 500 battle block, and I don't know why it didn't go higher than that, because the stats on your gear don't actually make much of a difference in terms of max health, stability, and all of that stuff. What the game is more so taking into account when it determines how much battle block you can get is the individual stats of a class. And I'm not talking stats after gems. I'm talking your base stat value. So you might not know this about Trove, but each of the classes in the game will actually end up leveling up different stats. So as an example, most of the physical based classes in the game will just get a lot more of those stats. Like the Knight, for example, the reason why it and the Revenant can get such high block value apparently is because they scale, like they just naturally get a lot more health, stability, health regen, and so on and so forth because they're supposed to be the tanky classes in the game. The problem is that there's a lot of issues going on with combat block right now. And because it's not taking your gems into account or anything like that, it means that you're very limited with the amount of combat block that you can actually get because the gear itself isn't giving us that much. Why this becomes insanely important in regards to what classes are viable for certain aspects of the game is because with this new update, and we'll get into this in a little bit later, we've got D15 of all worlds now. And if you're just farming normal dungeons, you can pretty much just main whatever class that you want and it doesn't matter. However, in the specific Long Shade world, there are 5-star dungeons that have enemies that are quite powerful. And they kind of force you into using classes that are better suited for delves rather than speed farming. I'm not saying that it's impossible, but the point being is like Shadowhunter, for example, is a jack of all trades, master of none. Most of all, he's a very, very capable speed farmer, not very good for delves, not very good for bosses. And unfortunately, because of that, in this update in particular, Shadowhunter kind of falls to the wayside. I could still use him for farming normal dungeons in D15, but in my case, I'm most of all trying to do the depths, which is, going to end up being something that we can actually solo now, especially depending on the certain classes in the game. And combat block is not a stat that the Shadowhunter has much of. It's not a stat that a lot of classes have much of. In particular, magic classes do not get much combat block. The reason this is important is because in the depths specifically, you'll get your flask drained faster than you can complete the floor if you don't have combat block. Or if you're doing 5-star dungeons in D15, there's the chance that you can have the giant clam boss appear that ends up having that weird purple attack that basically applies thorns and lets you kill yourself through death defying. So the point is combat block negates that and the depths, which is why I'm so adamant about like, oh, be careful which class you want to main with this update kind of thing. But anyway, combat block is a godsend. It is just unfortunate that it doesn't scale more off of gear. I would say that so long as you can get like maybe 40 minimum, very, very minimum combat block, so long as you're a strong enough class, that would be enough to solo some depths. But you're going to be going through a lot of block element because you're going to have to be refilling it constantly, which would kind of suck. Anyways, let's move on. So up next would be the big part of this update, which is the Mystic Gems. Combat block is extremely important, but Mystic Gems is going to be the big one that everyone's going to be focused on. So Mystic Gems have arrived, found in gem boxes obtained in Long Shade, difficulty 15 of any world at D15. Mystic Gems can help Trovians extend their power even further, allowing them to take on the toughest of enemies. It makes D15 a joke and is single-handedly why we can solo the depths, which I'll get into a little bit of that in a moment. Mystic Gems require some new materials to fully upgrade and some old materials. So in particular, there is a new item. There's a bunch of new items that we can end up crafting, but they're talking about the 10th life, which is basically a time-gated way to prevent players from maxing out their gems unless they spend money, which we'll get into. But they go on to say that if you like your crystal gems, good news, you can get a Mystic Gem Converter from the store, allowing you to keep your crystal gem stat allocations. It keeps everything from your crystal gems. It's the same as upgrading a stellar gem into crystal, where you basically keep all of your augments, all of the levels, so on and so forth. It's just more cost effective in most cases. So rather than 9th lives, the third booster available for Mystic Gems is the newly introduced 10th life. 10th lives can be found in all locations. 9 lives are found. So I think that means the daily or weekly loot boxes or whatever in a bunch of our locations. They can also be crafted 15 per week at the Adventurer's crafting table with a direct 1-to-1 ratio from 9th lives, which I'm a little bit peeved because, and I've talked about this extensively in some other videos, but I spent money on 9th lives and now they want me to spend money on 10th lives, and it costs the exact same as the 9th life, but the difference is that the 9th life craft recipe into 10th lives is time gated. So anybody, and I mean anybody that you're seeing over 52, maybe 53-ish, maybe even 54 KPR, anybody at that point has spent money, and no shame against them. I probably would do this myself if my Canadian dollar wasn't garbage compared to US currency. And unfortunately, credits in Trove, this is all US currency and it doesn't get localized. So that would be like hundreds of dollars for me in order for me to get enough of these. And on top of all of that, you might not want to speed run the 10th lives anyways, because in order to level up the gems, you're going to need to have these mystic gem shards, which is going to end up costing a pretty hefty sum of normal gem sparks that you get from all the Uber worlds and crystal gems and stellar and so on and so forth. Well, crystal gems, not stellar. But anyway, point is, all of this forges into one of these, and you need quite a few of these to max out a total gem. So unless you have all of the gem sparks and so on to max out your gems, there is literally no reason to buy those 10th lives. So in my case, I'm just going to slowly chip away at it because, frankly speaking, this gives me something to chase after in a game that I like grinding. So I'm perfectly okay with just going for that. Now, the other thing to consider is that which gems should you end up focusing on first? I was getting this question a lot during my live stream yesterday, and I've talked about this in other videos as well, but to reiterate, you only really need to upgrade your cosmic gems into Mystic. You can quite easily upgrade all of your other gems into Mystic just because it is going to end up having the biggest impact. So basically what happens is when you upgrade a crystal gem into Mystic, and let's say you have a maxed out crystal gem, it is essentially going to apply 30 levels worth of Mystic Gem stats. So you're going to see a huge stat bump as you end up forging those gems into Mystic, because Mystic Gems do have higher scaling than Crystal Gems. Now, I did end up getting my Cosmic Gems as maxed out as I could, and then unfortunately this ended up failing right at the last second on the last of the resources that I had, and I don't have any more of the 10th lives. It's covered by my face cam because I used all 15. And I can pretty much solo anything that the game throws at me right now because, again, the Cosmic Gems are the big ones. The other gems is more so for a flex. Now, I'm not saying that it's not going to make a difference maxing out all of the Ara gems, but you do want to be particular with which ones you focus on, and I would only ever recommend the Cosmic ones at the moment. Try to get a good set of Cosmic Gems for both physical and magic classes, and then you should be set. Now, the other thing to consider is that with Mystic Gems being added to the game, it means that you can, in fact, get Mystic class gems from the Everdark, which kind of sucks because it means that it's very RNG dependent on whether or not you get the Mystic class gem in the specific color slot that you want and whether it has 3 stars and so on and so forth. There's a lot of RNG with regards to class gems that kind of sucks. If you're trying to get class gems vanilla, honestly, don't bother crafting the upgrade item because look at this. This is absolutely astronomically insanely bad and overpriced. Again, thankfully, we can get the gem converters for 15k qubits, so it's around 170k qubits or something like that. I don't know. To max out all of your gems, or to forge a full set of gems, I should say. I only did it with a physical set of gems. Anyways, it's not that bad. It's just very time gated. The other thing to consider is that these golden keys that you normally would use on gem boxes and such, they do not work on the D15 boxes, so save your money. As for crafting empowered gems, empowered mystic gems, it is an absolute joke. So frankly speaking, it's going to be cheaper. Like, this is essentially very time gated because if you're a free-to-play player, you are not getting empowered gem boxes very often because you only get them every few weeks, or every week, I should say. From you go through the delves and then you craft like the stuff for Titan Souls, Lunar Souls, and all that stuff because essentially you get Titan Souls and Lunar Souls from delves now instead of Shadow Towers. Anyways, it's a huge thing. Basically, you have to unbox empowered gems in the first place, which is already not the most common. Then you loot collect them for these fragments, and then you could craft these boxes, which can still have class gem key fragments. So it's just, this is very time gated. It is cheaper for your time to just spend your qubits. I know, it kind of sucks because there's already too many things that spend qubits in this game anyway. But I think that pretty much summarizes the Mystic Gems. Let's get into the class balancing. So Chloromancer, increased healing effect. We're going to skip right over that. Mini Bloom spawn change has increased from 10% to 15%. Big Green Gatling during your ult has had damage increased by 25%. Gatling Gun, which I think is just the smaller normal one, has had an increase of damage of 20%. So Chloromancer is actually pretty good now, honestly, but you don't end up getting that combat block, and unfortunately the plants are just kind of stupid, so it's still not a good class for depths. You could still main it for other aspects of the game. Gunslinger has been getting a lot of love lately and is actually one of the strongest classes in the game currently, so basic attack damage was increased. Who cares? Your ult, though, has had the cooldown from 40 seconds to 33 seconds and lasts from 10 seconds to 11 seconds now. So that is absolutely busted. If you have a combo of a gunslinger and then a candy barb to pull everything in, it is devastating. It's like the good old days of Shadow Tower. Fade Trickster, damage coefficiency increased by 25%. Now, damage coefficiency does not mean 25% across the board. It's coefficiency. So it's basically like the overall arc of the class has been boosted. Ultimate, is that ultimate? Yeah, ultimate reduced from 40 seconds to 30 seconds now, so you can cast it more often. Glitter Bomb energy reduced. Vanguard is actually quite powerful right now, only in physical mode. Ranged mode is still Garbo. So Hero's Charge cooldown reduced from 20 seconds to 15. Energy Beam costs 60 energy instead of 70. That's a big one because that's kind of where all that class's damage comes from. You're just going to keep spamming that, using a potion to get your energy back, spam the right click. Melee damage coefficiency has been bumped up. It's not as significant as you would think, but it's still nice. When Heroes Charge is active, Vanguard now received a 50% boost to max health, health regen, and stability, which I'm assuming is so that you could get more block, but not really. Pirate Captain has had a pretty significant change because now by default you can throw down 2 turrets and your class gem allows you to throw a third one down, which means that you could potentially have some cracked damage, especially considering that the ultimate ability is now a 35-second cooldown down from 40 seconds. And for those of you that don't know, Candy Barb. Pirate Captain was one of the first classes in the game that could get to like 1 billion damage or something ridiculous, because if you just keep chugging potions, you can keep casting your ult, and that thing does like some of the highest damage values in the game. So if you can get enough turrets going, oh boy, it just melts things. But with that said, it's still not super efficient or cost effective because there's very few instances where you would get to do that without just running out of flasks. Revenant has had some buffs across the board. Vengeful Spirits has had its damage increased. Cooldown of Spirit Storm has been reduced. That's not that big of a deal. Spirit Spear's health cost has been reduced by 1%. Who cares? But frankly speaking, yeah, this class has already been fairly strong, and now it's a little bit stronger. Not that much, honestly, because the Vengeful Spirit is, yeah. Anyway, Draco has had a pretty significant change. Basic attack coefficiency increased by 50%. That's your base attack. But your ultimate has had just damage across the board, not coefficiency. 2.5% up to 10%. So that is a pretty significant bump up and makes a huge difference when you're on your ult on Draco. It just melts enemies. It's beautiful. Tomb Raiser has had max health of minions increased by 20%. Means they should survive longer. Hopefully means that you would get to max damage quicker because they would die less. Honestly, who cares? Trials of Luxion. Now, this is interesting. So, item pools from Trials of Luxion has been brought up to date with Fluxion. So, I think it means that if you end up voting on stuff with Fluxion, now Luxion should actually have those items. Golden Horde Dragon crafting limit on the Venturine crafting table has been increased to 30 per week instead of 15, which means that you only have to visit Luxion. I think you can get the dragon, like you could get the full maxed out Luxion dragon within a week, but you had to grind pretty extensively every single day just so you could get those 15 precious fragments. But now that you can end up getting 30, I assume this is a typo, per day, because you could always get like 15 per day and get anyway, you can get the dragon much easier, or faster, I should say. Not easier. It's still going to require a lot of time. Venturine caches are slightly more likely to give non-venturine rewards when getting sweet or lucky loot. Who cares? Depths. So the Deep Kraken and Deep Depth Steppers can now each start 5 floors earlier, which does make a difference. Souls of the Depths drop chance has increased across the board. Souls of the Depths can now be very rarely dropped from non-boss enemies found in the Depths and Deep Kraken Delves. Another few things they didn't mention is that the combat block thing is now in the hub of every area and at the end of every delve. So that's very, very important. The other thing too is that the Mystic Sparks for upgrading your gems can rarely drop from depths, but they commonly drop from the Kraken depths, which is a different type of portal. In order to end up getting the Kraken portal, by the way, you gotta complete one of the quest lines that, essentially you gotta do a bunch of fishing and a bunch of other crap. I don't know. Most people have done it. I haven't yet. Then there's some general fixes. Let me just skim through these to see if this is worthwhile. So they have D15 for all of the elemental worlds now, including Geo Topside. That got added on the test server long after my video talking about it not being there. So new wings and shield sigils have been added for higher levels. Class selector now saves the last selected filter, whatever. Mystic weapons, helms, and face masks with 3 or more stars will now loot collect into a single Soul of the Depths. They may as well have not even added that. Starting Room of the Depths Delve biome now has a rune crafting bench. Cool for people that want to actually craft those runes. Good. Crafting recipe for Duravelin, the Hollow Sprite, something. Their eggs are now always visible on the Dragon Crucible. Knight and Solarian VFX have been optimized. Performance should be improved when playing as or with either class. So they've been doing this over the year where they've slowly been optimizing the VFX of many of the different characters, which is why you've probably noticed a big performance boost as of late. Not necessarily with those two classes, because not many people were maining them right now. Solarian in particular, and Knight never had that much VFX, but still, it's very appreciated that they're doing that and slowly chipping away at that. The Runic Vault Codex Tome is now called the Depths Key Codex and produces 3 surfaced depth cache keys and Runic Depth Vault keys when fully charged. Really? I don't even have it. Craftable at the Rune Crafting Bench. Wait, really? Yeah, that's not bad, just because that gives you a couple extra keys, and those keys are time gated, so that would not be that bad. Where is it? Oh, gross. I gotta max this out, and I never bothered. Yeah, I don't, yeah, okay, never mind. Yeah, they got a couple other little bug fixes down here, nothing super crazy. They have acknowledged the Vac-O-Matic still being broken. They said that they'll fix that in the next update, which hopefully is pretty soon. They also did acknowledge that PlayStation and Xbox are very broken right now in regards to trying to upgrade your gems. Apparently there is a little bit of a workaround that people have discovered where you can upgrade your gems and then hop out of the UI, and then it's just, I don't know, it's really weird and convoluted and stupid. As far as when is the update coming to Nintendo Switch, no idea. I would hope that they're trying to get Trove to work on the Switch too before they start pursuing, like maybe that's why the update's delayed, but I think it's also just because they did mention how Switch was going to be behind with this update because they were still getting the August event. I might be mistaken. Anyways, that's it for the patch notes. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Hope you found this helpful. I've been really enjoying the update. I'm looking forward to chipping away at it and slowly streaming over the following week while still trying to chip away at some other videos and stuff like that. You can expect the event guide video to come out today, and if it didn't already, probably before this actually. And I mean, you know me, I've got other projects in the boiler, including a lot of common questions that I get from you guys. I want to have some videos that'll address that now that this update is actually out. You can expect me to deep dive into all of it. As we've got classes over 50 KPR, I do have the idea in my head to end up doing updated class guides, but I need to spend significant amount of time with each of the classes at significant power ranks so that I can kind of give my 2 cents towards it. However, I do have quite a bit of experience, as you saw with my 3 or 4 hour stream a couple weeks back, with all of the classes and the depths and so on and so forth. So I'll have some videos that'll talk about all that stuff, talk about the best classes to choose, and you know how it all goes. Anyways, smash like, sub for more, buy the merch you want to support the channel. Have a wonderful day, everybody. Sayonara and stay epic.